First shift. Lancaster Falls. The screaming started before the door gave way. Michael's shoulder hit the frame as the first crash landed, but the hinges held. Barely. Then came the second impact. Wood cracked. A bloody smear arced across the white paint as something slammed into the window beside them. Evan raised his Glock, breath hitching. His flashlight beam jittered, catching glimpses through the glass, torn lips, gray skin, bloodied fingers clawing at the sill. Michael didn't flinch. He stood there, hand clamped over the wound on his forearm, blood soaking through the torn sleeve. "Rook," he said, voice tight. "You got that cuff?" Evan nodded, hands slick with sweat as he fumbled in his belt pouch. The Smith & Wesson cuffs felt colder than they should. He glanced at Michael's face, pale, jaw tight, eyes focused. Still Michael. For now. "They're inside," Evan whispered, more to himself than anyone else. The hallway behind them echoed with groaning. Wet, uneven steps, something dragging. The kitchen door creaked. Michael knelt, one knee cracking against tile. "You cuffed me to the radiator, tight, right hand." He didn't wait for Evan's protest. "You do it now, or I'm dead weight with teeth in 10 minutes. "Mike, do it, Rook." Evan snapped the cuff around Michael's wrist. The other looped around the base of the radiator pipe. He gave it a tug. Solid. Michael leaned back against the wall with a grunt, breathing hard. Evan slid his last full magazine into the Glock. 15 rounds, 4 bodies outside. Unknown in the house. Then the back door blew inward, and the screaming turned into snarling. 12 hours earlier, Evan Adams had been adjusting his duty belt in the locker room, trying not to look like a kid playing dress-up. The polyester uniform itched under the arms. His nameplate, E. Adams, gleamed too new. He'd polished it twice. Michael Davidson leaned against the bench nearby, sipping burnt coffee from a cracked World's Okayest Dad mug, watching him with the bemused patience of someone who'd seen 100 rookies come and go. "You know," Michael said, "you tighten that belt anymore and your kidneys are gonna sue." Evan exhaled and relaxed his shoulders. "Just making sure everything's where it's supposed to be." "Everything won't be where it's supposed to be by the end of the shift, trust me. But you'll improvise. That's what we do." He offered a grin under his salt and pepper mustache. Michael's uniform had the faded look of long service, the badge dulled at the edges, but he wore it like a second skin. Evan had spent the last 2 weeks of academy dreaming of riding with him. Field training with the guy who'd once talked down an armed standoff with nothing but a cigarette and a promise of pancakes. "First shift nerves?" Michael asked, standing and stretching. His utility belt creaked. "Little bit." "Good. Means you're not a psychopath." He clapped a hand on Evan's shoulder. "Come on, Rook. Let's go see what Lancaster's hiding tonight." Outside, the August evening was heavy with heat. Humid air clung like a second shirt. The cruisers smelled faintly of vinyl, sweat, and stale fast food. Michael tapped the dash as he climbed in, muttering to the old Crown Vic like it was a stubborn mule. Radio chatter was light at first. A noise complaint on Buchanan Avenue. A suspected shoplifter at the Turkey Hill Market on Prince Street. Evan watched, listened, noted how Michael phrased things over the radio. Clipped clear, no wasted syllables. He asked questions when he could, mostly about protocol. "So, when you call in at 10:52, do you wait for confirmation before you approach?" "Depends on the neighborhood. But yeah, safer that way." Michael glanced at him, one hand on the wheel, the other resting lightly near the radio. "You always think 3 steps ahead like this?" Evan shrugged. "I play chess." "Figures. You've got the look. All quiet calculation. Don't forget to play the board, Rook. Not just the pieces. They made a loop past Maple Street just before midnight. Colonial-style homes with white trim and overgrown lawns. A porch light flickered outside 1847. Nothing unusual. Just the sleepy bones of Lancaster settling into night. Then the calls started to stack. Unit 4M Report of a disturbance at 1847 Maple Street. Screaming heard, possible domestic. Michael clicked the mic. 417 responding. He glanced at Evan. You bring your gloves? Yeah. Good. Domestic calls are a crapshoot. Keep your eyes open. They pulled up to the curb. Porch light still flickering. No movement in the windows. Michael approached first, flashlight angled low. Evan followed, hand near his holster. The front door was ajar. Michael knocked hard. Lancaster Police Department, hello? No answer. He pushed the door open. The hallway beyond smelled wrong, metallic and sour, like meat left too long in the heat. Michael turned to Evan, voice low. Call it in, we're entering. Evan keyed the mic. Dispatch, 417, entering residence at 1847 Maple. Door unsecured, no response. Inside, the air was thick. A ceiling fan spun lazily above the living room. A TV buzzed static in the corner. A child's toy truck sat overturned in the hallway. Evan's boot nudged something soft. A slipper. Then the kitchen door creaked open. Michael signaled silently. He took point. The kitchen was a massacre. Blood streaked the linoleum in arcs and puddles. A man slumped against the refrigerator, shirt shredded, torso a torn cavity. His eyes were open but unfocused. A woman stood over him, back to the officers, hands trembling. Ma'am, Michael said, stepping forward, are you hurt? She turned. Her mouth was red with blood, her eyes milky, skin pallid and loose around the jaw. Something in her throat gurgled as she lunged. Michael shoved Evan back and raised his baton in one movement. The woman slammed into him, teeth snapping. Evan's Glock was out, but the angle was wrong. Michael twisted, driving the baton into her neck. But she didn't stop. Then came the scream. Michael's. The woman's teeth clamped onto his forearm, tearing flesh. Blood sprayed across the fridge door. Evan fired. The shot cracked like thunder in the kitchen. The woman's head snapped back. She crumpled, twitching. Michael dropped to one knee, clutching his arm. Shit. Shit. She bit me. Evan was already at his side, pulling a tourniquet from his pouch. We need to get you to the hospital. Michael shook his head. No, listen. Rook, you saw her. That's not drugs. That's not rage. That's something else. He winced, teeth gritted. I've seen bites like this before, in Iraq. Rabies, sure. But this felt wrong. She didn't feel human. Evan wrapped the tourniquet tight. You're going to be okay. Michael caught his wrist. No, I'm not. And you know it. Footsteps upstairs. A door creaked. Others, Michael whispered. They moved fast. Back through the hallway. Evan kicked the front door shut and slid the deadbolt. We can hold here until backup. No, Michael said. No backup's coming. Not soon enough. You need to move me, but I can't be loose. Not if I turn. Evan stared at him. Michael held up his wrist. The radiator. Kitchen's got a solid one. You cuff me, grab ammo from the cruiser, and we move. Now. The front window cracked. A pale face pressed against the glass, smeared in blood. Another silhouette behind it. They ran. Evan dropped to his knees beside the radiator, hands shaking as he locked the cuffs. Michael winced but didn't complain. Check the drawers, maybe, he said. Kitchen might have a steak knife, anything sharp. Evan found a serrated blade, red with old sauce, and pocketed it. Then he was out the door, sprinting to the cruiser. The street was no longer empty. 3 figures staggered from the shadows, limbs jerking unnaturally. Evan drew his Glock, aimed. "Stop, police!" No reaction. He fired once. The shot went wide. Second round hit the lead figure in the shoulder band. No stumble, no sound. They kept coming. Evan dove into the cruiser, slammed the door, and yanked the lock. He grabbed 2 spare mags from the glove box, shoved them into his belt, and started the engine. The engine sputtered. The second try caught. He reversed hard, clipped a trash can, and spun the wheel. The cruiser fishtailed, tires shrieking. He hit the brakes outside the house, slammed the gear into park, and ran. Michael was waiting, pale but lucid. "Let's go," he said. Evan wrapped an arm around his waist and hauled him upright. Michael groaned but stayed on his feet. The front door was gone now, splintered inward. Figures staggered inside. They moved, down the porch steps, across the yard. Evan's breath came in ragged pulls. Michael stumbled, then found his rhythm. Behind them, the house moaned. A scream cut the night. Lancaster was waking up, and it was already too late. City on fire. The scream was still echoing as they hit the sidewalk, Michael leaning hard against Evan's shoulder. The cruiser idled behind them, its headlights cutting through drifting smoke, illuminating the twisted limbs of 2 bodies sprawled in the yard, one of them still twitching. Evan didn't look back. "Where?" he asked, voice tight with effort. "Downtown," Michael said, jaw clenched. "We head for the tunnels, entry near City Hall." Evan nodded, adjusted his grip, and they moved. Their boots slapped against the pavement. Sirens howled in the distance. Fire, ambulance, maybe one of theirs. The radio clipped to Evan's belt crackled. "Unit 417, status. Unit 417, respond." He ignored it. No time. Every step Michael took was slower than the last. Main Street wasn't far, but it felt like miles. The closer they got, the worse the smell. Not just rot now, but smoke and burned plastic. Something chemical clinging in the back of Evan's throat. A siren dopplered past, then cut out mid-howl. Somewhere ahead, glass shattered. They turned onto King Street and saw the city burning. Flames licked the upper windows of a law office. A pickup truck sat jackknifed into a streetlight, its front end crushed, horn blaring uselessly. A body lay in the road beside it, not moving. Michael stopped, breathing hard. "Cruiser won't get through this. Too many cars. We hoof it." Evan scanned the street. Movement in the shadows. Too fast for a drunk, too jerky for a person. He tightened his grip on the Glock. "Stay with me," he said. Michael gave a weak grin. "Not going anywhere." They skirted past a burning sedan. A woman screamed from a second-story window, waving frantically. "Help. Please. They're in the building." Evan hesitated. Michael didn't. "Keep moving." They're already inside. We stop, we die." The scream cut off. A wet, tearing sound followed. Evan flinched and forced himself forward. They passed the old post office, now dark and shuttered. A man pounded on the doors from inside, face bloodied, eyes wide. He mouthed something. Maybe they're everywhere. But Evan didn't stop. A block later, they reached a narrow alley that reeked of urine and old grease. Michael pointed. "Cut through here. Coffee shops at the end. Hollis might still be there." Frank Hollis, volunteer firefighter. Ran a local handyman business. Evan had met him once at a town hall meeting. A steady presence. The kind of guy who didn't panic. They reached the back door of the shop. Bean and Bloom, etched in faded gold on the glass. It was barricaded with a toppled bookshelf and a broken table. Evan knocked twice, sharp and deliberate. A pause. Then, "Who is it?" "Officer Adams," he called. "With Davidson." "We're clean." The barricade shifted. A pair of eyes peered through the crack. "Jesus," the voice said. "Hey, get in, quick." The door opened just enough. Evan guided Michael through, then pulled the door shut behind them. Frank Hollis latched it with a steel deadbolt and slid the table back into place. Inside, the shop was dim. The only light came from a battery lantern on the counter. The air smelled of burnt espresso and sweat. 3 others huddled near the front. A teenage barista clutching a baseball bat, a woman in nurse scrubs with a bloodied sleeve, and a man in a suit with a broken nose. "Anyone bitten?" Evan asked, scanning them. "No," Frank said. 2 tried to get in earlier, scratched at the glass like dogs. We didn't open." Michael eased onto a stool, face pale, lips tight. Evan moved to help, but he waved him off. "I'm good. Just need a minute." Frank took a step closer, eyeing the blood on Michael's jacket. "You sure?" "Wasn't them," Michael said. "Glass. We were ambushed." Frank nodded, not convinced, but didn't push it. "We got maybe 10 minutes before this spot's compromised," Evan said. "I heard a convoy go down, SWAT, maybe, something big, north end." Frank cursed. "That explains the noise. Whole street shook 10 minutes ago. You heading to the station?" "No," Evan said. "Too far. Tunnels near City Hall." Frank rubbed his jaw. "I know the hatch you mean. Maintenance access. Took a tour once after the flood. It's a crawl, but it'll get you close. Then we move. Let me grab supplies." The barista, name tag said Jess, stepped forward. "You taking us?" Evan hesitated. Michael looked up, eyes bloodshot. "Can't. Not through the tunnels. Too narrow, too dangerous. But I'm sorry." The nurse stood. "There's a fire escape in back. Can we get to the clinic?" Frank answered. "Clinic's gone. Saw smoke 2 blocks west. Best bet's the courthouse. Reinforced doors. Might already be fortified." Evan checked his watch. Time felt unmoored, but the reality was clear. Whatever was happening, it was spreading fast. He nodded to Frank. "You sure about the courthouse?" Frank's jaw clenched. "Sure as anything tonight." "Then take them. Move fast. Stay low." Frank grabbed a fire axe from behind the counter. "You." Evan looked at Michael. "We take the hatch." Frank held out a hand. Evan shook it. "Good luck, Officer Adams." "You too, Hollis." They moved to the back. Evan helped Michael up. Each step was harder than the last. Outside, the air was thicker. Smoke and something worse. The wind shifted, and Evan gagged. The copper tang of blood, sure, but also something sour and sickly sweet, like rotting meat left in the sun. A low moan drifted from the alley mouth. They didn't wait. The hatch was behind a municipal substation, a squat brick building with a rusted utility logo. Evan found the panel half hidden behind a trash bin. He yanked it open, revealing a metal ladder descending into shadow. Michael leaned against the wall, breathing shallow. "Radio," he said. "Check it." Evan pulled it from his belt. Static. Then a burst of speech. "Containment perimeter breached. Requesting aerial surveillance. Units in vicinity of Maple and Queen be advised. Area denial. Incendiary ordnance pending. Repeat. Area denial." The voice was flat, bureaucratic. No urgency. Just procedure. Michael met Evan's gaze. "They're going to burn it." Evan didn't answer. He helped Michael to the hatch. A scream cut through the air. Close. Then another. Wet footsteps. A dragging sound. Evan turned. Figures shambled into view. 6, maybe 7. One of them wore a sheriff's uniform, shirt torn, jaw hanging loose, flesh sloughed from his arm in strips. "Down," Evan said. Michael went first, slow and awkward. Evan followed, pulling the hatch shut behind them. Darkness swallowed them. The tunnel smelled of mildew and rust. Water dripped somewhere. Evan flicked on his flashlight. A narrow cone of light illuminated concrete walls and metal piping. The air was damp and close. Michael sat hard on the floor, back against the wall. Evan crouched beside him. "How long do we have?" Michael didn't answer. Evan checked his wrist. The handcuff still bit into his skin, cold and unyielding. The chain led to Michael's wrist, slack now. "You still with me?" Evan asked. Michael nodded, barely. Evan stood, light sweeping ahead. The tunnel stretched forward, curving slightly. He remembered the map from training, a maintenance loop connecting municipal buildings. If they stayed quiet, stayed low, they could make it to the station. Maybe. The radio crackled again. Priority evacuation of essential personnel. Fire suppression systems compromised. Repeat. Area denial incendiary ordnance approved for sectors 4 through 7. Evan clicked it off. Michael's voice was hoarse. "You should go." "No." "You'll move faster." "No." Michael looked at him. Really looked. "Rook, this isn't a game. You die down here, it's for nothing." Evan tightened his grip on the flashlight. "You're not dead yet." He started down the tunnel. Behind him, Michael pushed himself up, one hand dragging along the wall. Their footsteps echoed. Too loud. Every sound felt like a flare in the dark. Somewhere ahead, a door slammed. Then silence. Evan froze. He turned slowly, light catching the tunnel walls. A wet breath. He swung the beam left. A figure stood there, barefoot. Eyes milky, mouth twitching. It charged. Evan fired. The shot echoed like thunder. The figure staggered but didn't fall. He fired again, chest shot. No effect. Michael raised his free hand. "Head!" Evan adjusted and fired once more. The figure dropped, skull ruptured. More sounds now. Shuffling, groaning, the scrape of nails on concrete. Evan grabbed Michael's arm. "Move!" They ran. The tunnel curved, then split. Evan chose right, trusting instinct. The air grew colder. Pipes overhead hissed. Another moan echoed behind them, closer. Michael stumbled. Evan caught him. "Almost there," he lied. They reached a maintenance door. Evan kicked it open. Inside, a junction room lit by a single emergency bulb. A map on the wall. He scanned it. "We're close," he said. "Two more corridors, then the sub-basement under City Hall." Michael sank to the floor. Evan slid down beside him. For a moment, they just breathed. Up above, the world burned. Below, the dark pressed in. Evan closed his eyes and listened to Michael's ragged breath. The handcuff chain clinked softly between them. He didn't know how much time they had, but he knew what he had to do. Under the city. The map trembled slightly in Evan's hands. Not from any tremor in the tunnel, just his own. He pressed his fingers against the laminated plastic, trying to anchor himself, to ignore the smell creeping in from the corridor, the cloying, iron-sweet stench of blood over something sour and necrotic. It was stronger now, closer. Michael's breathing had changed. It was subtle at first, less wheezing, more wet, like something thick had settled in his lungs and was dragging every breath down with it. The cough that followed was sharp, tearing. Evan turned. Michael sat slumped against the wall, one knee up, the cuffed wrist limp. His skin looked worse under the emergency bulb, ashen, mottled with a grayish tinge that hadn't been there earlier. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but his eyes weren't focused anymore. Evan knelt beside him. "Mike." No response. He touched his shoulder. "Mike, look at me." Michael's head turned slowly. His eyes found Evan's face, but they were glassy, unfixed. His lips parted, and Evan leaned closer. "Rook," Michael rasped. Evan exhaled. Relief and dread mixed in his chest. Yeah, it's me." Michael's mouth twitched. You always were too stubborn." Evan tried to smile, but it didn't come. "You're the one still cracking jokes with a fever and a bite wound." Michael glanced down at the handcuff on his wrist. Shoulda made you shoot me back at Maple." Evan's throat tightened. "Stop. You knew it. I knew it. We both—" His words broke into a low growl. Evan flinched. Then Michael coughed again, hard, and spat something dark onto the floor. Evan stared at it. It wasn't blood. Not exactly. It was thicker, black, tar-like, with a glistening sheen that clung to the concrete in slow, viscous threads. He stood up fast. "We have to move." Michael didn't answer. Evan stepped back toward the map. 2 more corridors, 1 ladder, then the PD sub-basement. From there he could get to the armory, radios, reinforcements, maybe. A low moan echoed from the tunnel behind them. Not Michael. Evan's head snapped up. Another groan, closer. He grabbed Michael under the arm. "Come on, now." Michael's body moved, but not willingly. Dead weight. Evan gritted his teeth and pulled, dragging him upright. Michael's legs half moved, shuffling along. His head lolled. The handcuff chains scraped against the tile. They stumbled into the corridor. Pipes hissed above them, and the walls closed in tighter. The light from Evan's flashlight jittered with every step, shadows leaping across the concrete. Behind them, the moans grew louder, multiplying. Evan turned a corner and stopped short. A body lay sprawled across the passage ahead, face down. Civilian clothes, ripped jeans, flannel shirt soaked in blood. No movement. Evan edged forward, gun raised. He passed the corpse without incident. Then Michael made a noise, a low, guttural groan. Evan froze. He turned slowly. Michael stood hunched, eyes unfocused, mouth slack. Drool hung from his chin. The skin around his jaw had begun to darken, veins rising in stark black branches beneath the surface. His hands twitched. "Mike?" Evan whispered. Michael blinked. Evan." He took a step forward. "Stay with me," Evan said. "We're almost there. Just a few more—" Michael's body jerked. Then he lunged. Evan barely got the gun up in time. The barrel pressed against Michael's chest. Michael didn't stop. They crashed into the wall. The impact knocked the flashlight from Evan's hand. Darkness swallowed them except for the weak red glow of the emergency light behind. Evan felt teeth snap inches from his face. "Mike! Don't!" He shoved hard. Michael stumbled back, hitting the opposite wall. The handcuff chain rattled as he moved, but he didn't reach for it. He didn't speak. He snarled. The sound wasn't human. Evan raised the pistol. "Don't make me!" Michael charged again. Evan fired. The first shot went wide, grazing Michael's shoulder. He didn't flinch. Second shot. Center mass. Michael staggered but kept coming. Third shot. Head. Michael collapsed. The silence that followed was absolute. Evan stood frozen, the gun still raised, the echo of the shot still ringing in his ears. Michael lay crumpled against the wall. His head lolled at an impossible angle. One eye had ruptured. The other stared blankly at nothing. Evan's knees buckled. He sank to the floor beside the body, chest heaving, the pistol slipping from his fingers. His hands shook so hard he couldn't stop them. Blood, Michael's, spattered across his uniform. He looked down. The handcuff was still attached to Michael's wrist. The other end dangled loose. Evan reached for it. unclipped it from his own belt. He stared at the empty ring. It felt heavier than the gun. He didn't cry, not yet. The air was too thick, the smell too foul. Grief hadn't caught up. Only the sound of his own breath, the lingering reek of rot, and the growing chorus of moans somewhere behind. He had to move. He picked up the flashlight with numb fingers. The beam flickered, then steadied. He aimed it down the corridor. One more turn. He stumbled forward, stepping over Michael's body without looking down. The corridor narrowed. Pipes pressed closer. The walls seemed to pulse with heat and moisture, like the tunnels themselves were breathing. He found the ladder, a rusted iron thing bolted to the wall. The hatch above was marked PD Basement Access. Maintenance authorized only. Evan holstered the gun. His arms felt like lead. Every muscle ached. His throat burned. But he climbed, rung by rung. The ladder creaked under his weight. He reached the hatch, tried the handle. It stuck. "No," he whispered. He braced his shoulder and shoved. It gave with a shriek of metal and a waft of stale air. He climbed through. The PD sub-basement was dark, lit only by red emergency strobes. Filing cabinets, old evidence lockers, a water-stained bulletin board with faded flyers. He pulled the hatch shut behind him and locked it. Seconds later, something slammed into it from below. He staggered back. Another slam. Then a chorus of them. Fists, claws, bodies. He backed away until his spine hit the far wall. Then he sank to the floor. Only then did the tears come. They were silent at first, just wetness on his cheeks. Then the sobs hit. Deep, ragged, involuntary. He pressed his hands to his face and wept. For Michael, for himself, for whatever was left of Lancaster. Time passed. He didn't know how much. Eventually, he pushed himself up. There was work to do. He moved to the basement door. It was locked from the inside. He keyed in the override code. The bolt clicked. Beyond it, the police station. Maybe survivors. Maybe not. He didn't know what waited up there. But he knew what he'd left behind, and he wouldn't forget. Hold the line. The door opened onto a hallway dimmed by failing fluorescence. The buzzing overhead sounded like flies caught in glass. Evan stepped through, gun drawn, shoulders tight. His boots squelched faintly on the tile, damp, sticky. The hallway curved left toward the armory, right toward the vault. Blood smeared along the baseboards like it had been dragged by a careless brush. A spent shell casing gleamed near a crumpled coffee cup. He moved right. The vault had been retrofitted years ago, originally for narcotics, now a fallback shelter. He remembered the drill from the academy. Reinforced steel door, independent air vent, one manual override. On paper, it could hold 30. In practice, maybe 20, with room to breathe. He rounded the corner and nearly collided with Reynolds. The older officer had a shotgun slung over one shoulder, a bandage wrapped tight across his left bicep. Sweat poured down his temple, and his eyes were ringed with fatigue. For a second, neither spoke. Then, "Jesus, Rook," Reynolds breathed. "Thought you were dead." "Not yet," Evan said, voice cracked and hoarse. "Is Lieutenant Chen still—" "Upstairs," Reynolds said, jerking his head toward the stairwell. "Trying to get a signal through. We've got a squad radio, but it's intermittent. Military's broadcasting something about area denial. It's not clear." "Incendiary?" "Probably. They're not saying it outright," Evan swallowed. His throat was raw. "Civilians?" "In the vault. Hollis is helping keep them calm. Kid in there, maybe 6 or 7, keeps drawing pictures on the whiteboard, keeps the others from breaking." Evan nodded. I need to see Chen. Reynolds didn't argue. He just stepped aside and motioned him through. Watch the corners. Torres is patrolling, but we're stretched thin. The squad room was lit by a single lantern propped on the sergeant's desk. Maps were spread across the surface, and beside them, a half-eaten energy bar and a bottle of aspirin. The radio hissed intermittently, punctuated by coded static bursts, and the occasional garbled phrase. Containment perimeter. Authorization pending. Civilian presence unconfirmed. Evan climbed the stairs 2 at a time. He found Chen at the top landing, crouched beside the comms relay. She looked up, eyes narrowing, then softening. Adams, she said. You made it. He nodded, suddenly unsure how to stand. Michael didn't. She didn't flinch, just gave a small nod and looked away toward the window. The glass had been spiderwebbed from an earlier impact, maybe a brick, maybe something worse. Outside, the street was quiet. Smoke drifted low across Maple Avenue. Somewhere, a car alarm wailed and then died. Chen stood brushing dust from her knees. We've got 17 civilians in the vault. 4 officers, including you. One of them, Officer Park, was bitten. We locked him in holding. He's still coherent. For now. Evan didn't ask why they hadn't already done it. He knew the answer. Chen led him down to the main floor. They passed the evidence lockers. One had been forced open, the contents scattered. A broken baton, a taser with no cartridges, a dozen tagged pill bottles. He caught the sour chemical smell of vomit and bleach. In the corner of the bullpen, a child's drawing had been taped to the wall. Stick figures holding hands, a son with a smiling face, the words, "Thank you, police," in crayon. Someone had traced over the letters with a Sharpie, trying to preserve them against the damp. Frank Hollis was near the vault door, kneeling beside a woman who clutched a toddler. He looked up as they approached, his eyes red but alert. "Adams," he said. "Glad you're still breathing." Evan nodded. "How's it inside?" "Hot. Cramped. But no one's screaming. Kid in the back's got a fever. Maybe just stress. Maybe not. Can't tell." Chen stepped forward. "We're preparing for rooftop evac. If the birds come, we've got one shot. Station power's unreliable. Elevators are dead. We have to clear the stairwell." Frank stood. "How bad is it?" "Worse than it sounds," Chen said. "We've got at least 6 infected between 2nd and 3rd floor. Maybe more. They're not moving in a pack. They're waiting." "Waiting?" Evan echoed. She looked at him. "Like they know we're trapped." Reynolds joined them, wiping his face with a rag. "Torres says he saw one of them testing the fire door. Not pounding, testing. Like it remembered." No one spoke. Evan felt a chill crawl up his spine. He looked toward the stairwell. The metal door was shut tight, the handle secured with a makeshift barricade of desks and a filing cabinet. But beyond it, he could almost hear them. The shuffling, the breathing, the click of fingernails on tile. "Weapons?" he asked. "Low," Chen said. 2 ARs, 1 shotgun, pistols, 43 rounds of 5.56, maybe 69 9mm between us. No flashbangs. 1 tear gas canister, if we want to get fancy. And when that runs out?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to Reynolds. "Start prepping evac packs. Anything light and useful. Water, radios, medkits." He nodded and moved off. Evan turned to Hollis. "You armed?" "I've got a fire axe and a crowbar," Hollis said. "Used to be enough." "Still might be." Chen tapped her radio. "Command, this is Lancaster PD Unit 1. Requesting immediate confirmation of air evac ETA. We are prepping rooftop access. Repeat, rooftop access required. Over." Only static replied. She sighed. "Let's get moving." They spent the next 30 minutes fortifying the corridor leading to the stairwell. Filing cabinets, desks, riot shields bolted into doors. Torres returned with a cracked riot helmet and handed it to Evan. Found it in the locker room, still smells like sweat and regret. Perfect, Evan said, strapping it on. Chen laid out the plan in clipped, calm tones. We open the stairwell. Evan and Torres take point. Suppress anything that moves. Reynolds and I cover from the flank. Hollis stays with the civilians. If we fall, he seals the vault. No, Hollis said. Chen looked at him. I'm not sitting this one out. You need every hand. Chen hesitated. Just a second. Then nodded. Crowbar and fire axe, you go third in line. Keep clear of friendly fire. They unbolted the door. The metal groaned as it opened. The stairwell beyond was dark. Emergency lights flickered every third step. Blood smeared the walls. A body lay crumpled halfway up the flight, face down, unmoving. They advanced. Evan led, weapon raised. Torres behind him, breathing slow and steady. Hollis gripped the axe with white knuckles. Chen and Reynolds moved with practiced steps, checking corners, watching angles. The first infected came fast. It launched from a side hall with a hiss, slamming into Torres. The younger officer went down hard, but Evan was already turning, firing twice. The thing's jaw exploded in a mist of black blood. It twitched, then stilled. Up! Chen shouted. They moved. The second-floor landing was worse. 3 infected, crouched behind the vending machines like animals in ambush. Evan fired, missed. Reynolds stepped up, shotgun roaring. One went down. The others scattered, then lunged. Torres was back on his feet. He took one in the side, drove his knife into its throat. It kept coming. Hollis swung the axe. The blade bit deep. Bone cracked. The thing dropped, twitching. Torres, Chen shouted. Bit? No, he gasped. I think just bruised. They pressed on. 3rd floor, final landing before the roof. The door was blocked, jammed from the other side. Crowbar, Chen snapped. Hollis moved up, jamming the metal into the seam. Evan and Torres covered the rear. Shadows moved below. More groans. The horde was waking. The door gave with a screech. Sunlight spilled in, gray filtered through smoke. The roof was empty. For now. Chen keyed her radio. Command, this is Lancaster PD. Rooftop access achieved. No hostile contact. Requesting immediate evac. Repeat, evac now or we're dead. Over. Static. Then, copy. Bird inbound. ETA 6 minutes. Hold position. Area denial authorization confirmed. Evan turned to Chen. What does that mean? She looked at him, then down the stairwell. It means they're lighting the whole block. The groans grew louder. 4 minutes. They pulled the civilians from the vault, one by one in tight groups. Mothers clutching children. A man helping his elderly father up the stairs. The kid with the drawings clutched a stuffed bear with one arm, the other holding Torres's hand. The infected were coming. They poured into the 1st floor like a tide. Bodies slamming into barricades, fingers clawing through gaps. Reynolds and Chen laid down fire, precise and measured. Hollis swung the axe again and again. Evan reloaded, hands slick with sweat. 2 minutes. The helicopter's rotors thundered in the distance. Chen grabbed Evan's arm. You're last out. Make sure they get up. What about you? I'll delay them. No. She didn't argue. Just pressed the family photo into his hand. If I don't make it, burn the station. Don't let them spread. The last group reached the roof. The infected hit the 2nd floor landing. Chen dropped the tear gas canister and kicked it down. White smoke billowed. Evan hesitated. Chen turned, raised her rifle, and fired into the haze. "Go!" she shouted. He ran. The helicopter hovered above, side doors open. Torres helped civilians aboard. Reynolds grabbed Evan's hand, pulled him up the last rung. They lifted off. Evan looked back. The station was burning. Chen's figure was lost in the smoke. The family photo crumpled in his fist. Last ascent. The helicopter banked hard as it rose, rotor wash sending a swirl of smoke and ash across the rooftop. Evan clung to the metal handrail at the door, his legs still dangling over the edge. Reynolds gripped his vest collar, pulling him the last few inches inside. The wind was deafening, the world below a shifting hellscape of firelight and ruin. "Inside!" Reynolds shouted, arm hooked under Evan's. "We're not airborne yet." Evan scrambled in, boots scraping metal. The door slammed shut behind them, Torres throwing the latch as the chopper tilted again, climbing. Inside, the cabin was packed. Civilians hunched against bulkheads, eyes wide, some crying, others silent. A child sobbed into a mother's coat. Hollis sat on the floor, cradling a teen with a tourniquet wrapped tight around her leg. She was conscious, barely. Evan turned back to the window. Smoke coiled up from the stairwell access. No sign of Chen. No more gunfire. Just the thick, rolling white of the gas cloud, and the growing orange flicker of flames inside the building. "Where is she?" he asked, voice hoarse. Reynolds didn't answer. His left arm trembled. Blood soaked through the sleeve of his uniform, dark, arterial, pulsing with each heartbeat. "Reynolds," Evan said, moving toward him, "You're hit." Reynolds waved him off with his good hand. "Later." The pilot's voice crackled over the headset. "Approaching altitude. Visual on perimeter clear. Area denial confirmed. 60 seconds. "Meaning?" Torres asked, eyes darting between the civilians and the windshield. "Meaning we're about to see hell from above," Reynolds muttered, pressing gauze to his shoulder. "And she's still down there." Evan pressed his forehead to the cold window. The station was shrinking below them. Lancaster PD now ringed in fire. The roof hatch still open. No movement. He gripped the family photo in his pocket, edges damp with sweat. Then the blast hit him. A controlled detonation. No mushroom cloud, but a precise, brutal punch. The stairwell door blew outward in a bloom of fire and smoke. The rooftop lit orange, then vanished under the pulse of pressure and flame. The chopper rocked, jolted by the shockwave. Civilians screamed. Hollis threw himself over the girl, shielding her. "She did it," Evan whispered. No one answered. Below, the fire spread fast, consuming the rooftop, then crawling down through the station. A plume of black smoke twisted into the sky, thick with the stench of burning rubber, scorched wood, and something worse, flesh, decay, the rot of the infected. The smell punched through the cabin vents, thick and sour. "Hold on," the pilot called. "We're heading east. Evac corridors still hot, fast and low." The city unfurled beneath them, Lancaster in ruin, fires in clusters like malignant growths, smoke columns rising from Maple Street, from the hospital near Duke and Lime. A strip mall on Route 30 was fully engulfed, cars burning in rows. In the distance, the grain silos stood like tombstones, untouched but surrounded by fields gone to ash. Evan scanned for movement. Streets were clogged with abandoned vehicles, some still idling, bodies scattered between them. Some moved too fast, too wrong. The infected. Dozens. Hundreds. Pouring out of alleyways, staggering through smoke, running full tilt toward noise. The helicopter dipped low, skimming rooftops. The pilot cursed under his breath, juking sideways to avoid power lines. In the cabin, the wounded girl whimpered. Hollis held her tighter. "We need a medic," he shouted. "She's fading." "Med center's gone," Reynolds said, eyes fixed on the window. Best we've got is wherever they're taking us. Evan looked over. The older officer's face was pale, sweat beading on his brow. The gauze at his shoulder was soaked through. You need pressure on that, Evan said, moving to him. Reynolds gave a weak grin. You're getting bossy, Rook. Yeah, well, Evan muttered, pulling a compression bandage from the wall kit. You taught me how. He wrapped it tight, hand steady despite the trembling in his own fingers. Blood seeped through, but slower now. Reynolds winced. Guess I won't be breaching any more doors, he said through clenched teeth. Evan met his eyes. You bought us time. All of us. That matters. The older man nodded, jaw tight. The helicopter banked again, heading toward the eastern perimeter. Below, the city thinned, less dense housing, more open fields. A schoolyard burned near a church. A gas station had exploded. Its skeletal canopy collapsed over blackened cars. Sirens wailed somewhere. Too late, too few. Where's the second bird? Torres asked. Command said one evac, the pilot replied. They didn't say anything about a second run. Hollis stood, swaying with the motion. There were others. In the vault. I saw them. We didn't get them all. Reynolds looked up. We got who we could. Not enough, Hollis said, voice tight. That wasn't enough. Evan didn't speak. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the photo. Chen, her daughter, her wife, smiling on a beach somewhere. A frozen moment. He stared at it, the edges curled and stained. It still smelled faintly of the station. Gun oil, dust, burnt coffee. He folded it carefully, tucked it back into his vest. Below, the perimeter fire lines came into view, a ring of flame and concrete. Hastily assembled barriers manned by soldiers in hazmat suits. Trucks burned along the edge. One soldier waved the chopper through, gesturing toward a clearing marked with flares. We're setting down, the pilot said. 2 minutes. Evan stood, bracing himself on the bulkhead. The others did the same. Hollis lifted the girl again, cradling her like a child. Torres helped a woman to her feet. Reynolds stayed seated, breathing shallow. As they descended, Evan looked one last time at the city. Lancaster, Pennsylvania. His first shift. His last. Smoke blurred the horizon. The sky was the color of old ash. The helicopter touched down hard. The doors opened. Medics rushed in. Let's move, someone shouted. Civilians poured out first, stumbling, carried, half-dragged. A stretcher for the girl. Hollis followed, blinking in the sunlight. Torres helped the mother and child down the ramp. Evan turned to Reynolds. Come on. I've got it, Reynolds said, standing. His knees buckled. Evan caught him. Together they stepped out into the scorched field. The noise hit them. Shouting, engines, the low thrum of another helicopter prepping. Soldiers moved in tight patterns, weapons ready. A triage tent stood nearby, already full. Beyond it, a line of buses, evacuees being loaded. They walked in silence, smoke curling around them. A medic took Reynolds' arm. We've got him. Evan let go. He turned once, looking back at the helicopter, then up toward the sky. No sign of a second bird. No sign of Chen. He walked toward the triage tent. The family photo pressed to his chest. Later, after the wound cleanings, after the interviews, after someone handed him a ration bar and a bottle of water, Evan sat on the edge of a cot and opened the photo again. He lit a match, watched it curl and blacken. Ash drifted onto the grass. He didn't cry, but his hands shook. He stood, walked past the tents, past the soldiers and the lines of dazed survivors. He found a quiet patch of field near the fence, sat down, and looked back at the city. The fires were still burning. He pulled out the battered notebook from his vest, Michael's. Pages torn, scrawled with notes, reminders, jokes. He flipped to the last page, found the line Michael had written weeks ago. First shift. Don't screw it up. Evan stared at it. Then beneath it wrote, last shift. She didn't. The sun was rising over Lancaster. Smoke curled into the sky, but the light still came. First shift, Lancaster Falls. The helicopter blades spun again, slower this time, winding down from their last run. Evan stood beside the wire fence, wind tugging at his sleeves, watching the city smolder behind the haze. The triage tent flapped open and shut in the breeze, revealing glimpses of motion inside. Bandaged limbs, IV bags, someone screaming softly into their own hands. Boots crunched behind him. You good, officer? Frank Hollis asked, voice low, worn. He had a thermal blanket wrapped over his shoulders, but it didn't hide the blood drying along his collarbone. Evan didn't answer right away. He shifted the notebook in his hands, fingers smudged with ash. Frank followed his gaze to the skyline. Still burning? Yeah. They stood in silence for a while. The wind carried the faint scent of char and diesel. Somewhere behind them, a soldier barked orders to an evac line. A child cried, high and thin. Frank nodded toward the open field. They're saying roadblocks are going up. East and south already closed. Military trucks came through an hour ago, clearing the way for another wave of civvies. Guess we were early. Evan rubbed at his temple. His hands were still trembling. Did Torres get out? Saw him get on the bus with the kid. Looked rattled, but whole. Frank exhaled. That's something. Evan looked at the sky. The smoke had thinned enough to show pale blue behind it. She didn't make it. Frank didn't need to ask who. I know, he said. Heard the chopper never came back. Some say comms went dark. Others say it circled, but couldn't land. She stayed to buy us time, Evan said. Held the stairwell. She knew the cost, Frank replied. That's what command is. Evan looked down. The notebook still sat open in his hand, pages fluttering in the breeze. He closed it carefully, then reached into the inside pocket of his vest. He pulled out the handcuff. It was scratched, scorched on one side, the locking mechanism jammed. One of Michael's. The one Evan had used to bind him to the pipe back in the tunnels. The one that had held, even when everything else had fallen apart. He turned it over in his palm. The metal caught the light. Frank watched, saying nothing. Evan stepped forward and set it gently on the helicopter seat. The same one Michael had slumped into, laughing about his busted knee before the bite changed everything. He rested his hand on it for a moment. Then he picked it back up and slipped it into his pocket. A voice crackled from the nearby radio unit. One of the soldiers hunched over it, fiddling with the gain. Repeat, cluster confirmed in York. Civilian evacuation compromised. Units diverting southbound. Gridlock reported en route 30. Another voice came through, more garbled. Containment breach outside Harrisburg. Orders pending. Advise rerouting all non-essential transport. Frank looked up. It's spreading. Evan nodded. Wasn't just Lancaster, Frank said, more to himself than anyone. No, Evan said. We were just one of the first. The soldier at the radio turned, face pale. You two cleared for evac? We're waiting on orders, Frank said quickly. Then stay close. They're loading another bird in 10. Evan didn't move. He stared out at the city again, then toward the horizon. Fields, roads. The distant shimmer of cars crawling along two-lane highways, people walking with bags over their shoulders. He saw a woman carrying a dog, a man limping with a crutch. Families clustered around old sedans, hoods up, steam rising. You ever think it'd go like this? Frank asked. Evan shook his head. No, I thought... He stopped. I thought there'd be more warning, that someone would sound an alarm. They did, Frank said. We just didn't hear it in time. A woman nearby burst into sobs. She clung to a little boy, rocking back and forth on the ground. No one approached her, not yet. Frank moved without a word. He knelt beside her, one hand gently on her back, murmuring something Evan couldn't hear. The woman didn't flinch. She just wept harder, and Frank stayed there, solid as a stone. Evan turned away, walking slowly toward the next helicopter, prepping on the far end of the field. The rotors were idling, its sides marked with a stenciled number and a spray of dried mud. Soldiers stood nearby, checking manifests. He paused a few feet away, letting the noise wash over him. The wind tugged at his collar. He reached into his vest again and pulled out the notebook one more time. He turned to the last page. First shift. Don't screw it up. He stared at the line he'd written beneath it. Last shift. She didn't. He flipped to a blank page, took out the pencil stub tucked into the binding, wrote, Survived Lancaster. 1 evac point secured. Civilian group led by Hollis, extracted. Torres alive. Reynolds wounded but stable. Chen. He stopped, drew a line, then beneath it, Michael Davidson, field training officer. Last seen in maintenance tunnels, bitten, restrained, sacrificed. Another line. Rook Adams, first shift complete. He stared at the words. Then in smaller print, not the last. He closed the notebook and held it tight to his chest for a moment, then slipped it back into his vest. The soldier at the helicopter door called out. You're on this one? Evan nodded. Then let's move. He climbed aboard. The interior stank of fuel and sweat. A dozen others were already inside, some in uniform, some not. A young girl slept against her mother's side, a bandage across her forehead. An older man held a portable radio, tuning it slowly through static and snippets of emergency traffic. As Evans sat, the handcuff pressed against his ribs. He let it stay there. The metal was cold, grounding. The doors closed. The helicopter lifted, slow at first, then rising fast above the field. The city shrank beneath them, flames still licking at rooftops, the police station, a blackened square among the blocks. The river curled like a dark scar to the east. Farther out, more smoke. More movement. The radio in the old man's lap flared to life again. Containment zones failing in Cincinnati and Raleigh, emergency response overwhelmed, National Guard redeploying from western sectors. All units advised, assist civilian extraction where possible. Stand by for secondary outbreak protocols. The man looked up at Evan, eyes wide. You hear that? Evan nodded. Yeah. The man swallowed. You think it's the same everywhere? Evan didn't answer. The helicopter banked, turning east. Below them, the roads were choked with cars. Fields turned to makeshift camps. Smoke rose from more than just Lancaster now. Evan looked down at the chaos, then closed his eyes. He thought of Michael, grinning through the pain. Of Grace Chen holding the stairwell alone, of Torres carrying a child, of Frank kneeling beside a stranger. He thought of the notebook, the first shift, the last shift. He opened his eyes. I'm not done, he said quietly. No one heard him over the rotors. That was fine. It wasn't a promise for them. It was an oath for himself.